Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We hope you are enjoying your holiday weeks. It's almost New Year's, and to bring in the New Year's, we are here on another episode of The 10. We're going to talk a lot of bowl games today in the Big Ten Conference. I'm your host, Greg Waddell. We've got Doug Kezirian with me as well, and we will preview all of the best action in this Big Ten Conference throughout this show. Before we get into it, I would like to remind you that we have an ongoing college football playoff profit boost here at Bet Rivers. You can log into your Bet Rivers account each day of a college football playoff game to receive a same game parlay profit boost valid for any college football playoff game. See the Bet Rivers app for more details. All right, Doug, this is our second straight week of just one episode of this show this week before we make it into the new year. We do plan to return to 2 episodes a week once basketball season really gets underway. But how was your holiday, first of all? Did you have some good time with family and friends, Doug?
Yeah, pretty nice. My mom visited for about a week, so pretty low key. My brothers were all with their kids and things like that. So pretty low key. A lot of sports going on, in case you didn't know that. So it's always been busy, whether it's Thanksgiving or Christmas throughout my entire career. It's always been really busy around the holidays, but that means there are often betting opportunities. And that certainly is the case right now with all these bowl games. It's just a different animal when we're talking about the non-playoff games. And we've discussed this. We know the drill. You just got to be careful. But, it's not like the odds makers know much more than you do. So that's the silver lining in it all.
Yeah, you can try and sort through who you think will play or not play. It's still often a mystery. Shout out to Penn State, who made it seem that, hey, they still found a way to beat Dabo Sweeney. PJ Fleck still found a way to win his 7th consecutive bowl game at Minnesota, I believe. Some Big Ten trends that we have brought to the program did play true in the first few bowl games for this league. And we've got 5 games to sort through today to hopefully help identify some more. Let's start with Michigan and Texas. Kyle Whittingham is in at the helm of the Wolverines. Texas favored by 7.5. Again, total is 48.5. Doug, we did discuss program that the early action on this game would be, if you're wise, to jump on the Texas side of things with so much in question for Michigan. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, do you still feel strongly that the Longhorns are the side in this game?
Not as strongly. I think the chaos has been settled a little bit. I think Ward Manuel did a wonderful job by hiring Kyle Whittingham. I think he's a perfect sort of steady hand for what the program needed. And I think not letting him coach the Vegas Bowl and having him fly directly to the players and sort of just steady the ship, like that's what he sort of is. And I think there's a calming hand. I think Biff does as well. He's an interim coach in the past when Sharon Moore was suspended. So I think that things have been stabilized. I don't think Underwood's transferring, right? We can speculate that. I mean, I imagine there'll be some news coming out the day of the game, but still, I think we're pretty safe on Underwood. We know Arch Manning's coming back. I still think Texas has too much sort of firepower for Michigan. This is a Wolverines team that was sort of overwhelmed and overmatched at times. Remember, they barely beat Purdue. They had some shaky performances. Texas was coming on late. I do think Sark can sort of use this as a catapult for next season, but you're also laying 7.5 points. I mean, that's the other thing here. So you got to be really careful in this regard. So for me, it's a regular play. It did get up high. We were talking about this when this was through 6.5. I still thought 7.5 was a play because I thought it could get higher. But, Texas is going to be missing some guys as well. They also fired their defensive coordinator. Let's not forget about that. Will Muschamp's been hired, but Texas defense has some starters out for this game. So, we just touched on it. There's a little bit of a guessing game, but I do think the Longhorns are going to be a little bit more reliable. And I just think their ceiling is so much higher than the Wolverines.
Yeah, I certainly liked it more when there was a vacancy at the coaching spot. I would have loved for this playoff game to have happened while Michigan was still flirting with Kalen DeBoer publicly. Somehow, some way, that institution just seems to stumble into good outcomes more than any institution in college sports. And I agree with you. Whittingham's a great coach. Michigan's going to have my full attention going forward. And at minimum, even if he's not coaching this game, at minimum, he's going to keep Bryce Underwood here for this game. And I expect Bryce Underwood to probably fare pretty well against a Texas defense that is missing some key parts. I still like Texas. I'm with you. I'm going to play Texas in this game. I think it's almost just out of respect for the situation that Michigan is in. You still want to take Texas. I don't think the interim coaching staff for Michigan is necessarily a group that the players are going to be all inspired to, go win 1-4 here, knowing that all of them are out on the way here. I think Texas motivationally is very much still the side that will want to get this victory to build on going forward with Arch Manning coming back a year from now. And more importantly, I just think Texas is a better football team. I mean, lost in this, we can situationally analyze everything here. Michigan, when they've gone up against the best of the best this year, did not fare well. They were not overly competitive. And, the mutual opponent here would be Oklahoma. Michigan lost that game. Texas, I think had one of their better performances of the year in that game. So give me Texas -7.5, but it's not a smash spot as we once discussed. Let's move to the second game on the list here. It is Iowa and Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt Commodores by 5.5 against Kirk Ferentz's Iowa Hawkeyes in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Total is 47 here. Anything you like?
I think I'm going to take a shot with Iowa here. I think there's some correlation to the under. Diego Pavia, obviously Heisman weekend and all that was one thing, but like how involved or engaged is he for this bowl game? One would think he should be with his draft stock always sort of under the spotlight. I mean, that's if he even gets drafted, so he could help that cause a lot with this game. I just, it's a little bit of a leap of faith for a wild card if you're going to back Vandy and lay the points. The problem is this Vandy defense is susceptible to the pass, but can Iowa really throw on them? And that's not something we can see. But we know Iowa's going to bring it. We know that they are going to look at this as a chance to perform against an SEC school. I think they can run all over this Vandy defense. Stowers, in terms of the Commodores' offense, is out. That's something to consider. I just, I love Clark Lee. I think he's the perfect guy for that program, and obviously it's headed in the right direction. I think I'm just feel a little safer taking Iowa in the points here.
Yeah, I think it's a good number if you do want to back the Hawkeyes. For me, it's a stay away because I love Clark Lee. I'm glad you hit on that talking point. I think he's the real deal. I thought Michigan might have taken a look at him if Whittingham ended up not coming to fruition. And, I think Pavia is the huge question mark here. If you got mid-season, I'm trying to win the Heisman, Diego Pavia, I think I would actually play the Commodores here. He is such an enigma to me. Does he care about this at all? Obviously, he could be playing for NFL draft circumstances. He could be sort of trying to get a PR boost from the debacle that was his Heisman ceremony. Or, there's a world here where Pavia is just completely checked out and ready to move on into a very fun phase of his life post-college. I don't know. We know what Iowa is. We know they're going to be stout. They're going to be physical. They're going to try and run the football. The fear for me is that I think Vanderbilt's run defense might hold up decent enough against Iowa. I really would feel better talking my way into the Hawkeyes if they had some semblance of a healthy passing attack. So for me, it's not the matchup either way that I would want to see. With the Pavia questions, it is a stay away at the number at 5.5. Let's go next to the college football playoff games, a trio of Big Ten teams left here. Should be both highly entertaining watches and some very fun games to bet on. We start with the Cotton Bowl, where the Buckeyes are 9.5-point favorites against the Miami Hurricanes. Miami won that dogfight of a defensive battle against Texas A&M in round one. And as defending national champs, the total's at 41 here. It's a big number at 9.5, but Ohio State is definitively the better team. What do you think here, Doug?
I feel like both numbers, the side and the total, are a little too high. With so much during the regular season, was Ohio State's going to run a slow pace because they're playing for the long season and things like that. Well, it was kind of a slow pace against Indiana, too. I think this game's going to be fairly shortened by both teams. I'm not sure Carson Beck and this offense can do a whole lot against this Buckeyes defense. I just can't. I just have some apprehension with Mario Cristobal. I think he's a knucklehead. I think Miami could have got the first down and run out of bounds and not let A&M drive the field and throw a pick in the end zone. But that's Cristobal not sort of being a master of any sort of clock management. And I just think he's kind of a meathead and a bozo. But Ryan Day has tightened up in these situations. Let's not forget that. He's play calling right now with no Heartline. So there's some apprehension there. I have to take the points. I think the Canes can play loose and easy. Low scoring game. I think it's going to go under a little bit as well. So the 9.5 just seems to have a lot of value here. I just think the Buckeyes are a really hard team to handicap, right? I really like what they did in the few big games they had this year, except for Indiana. I think they were a little flat in that game, but they have the weapons at wide receiver. If guys are going to be wide open like they are most of the year, Sand's certainly going to hit them. I thought Sand played pretty darn well against Michigan. The touchdown passes were wide open, but everything else, he played great. And I think he'll do enough. I just think 9.5 is too many points. And I wonder if it gets to 10, but I think there's been enough buyback in the market at 10 that I think 9.5 is probably the apex. It just feels like too many points here.
I thought Miami was very inspired, and I was really impressed with their performance. I did not expect them to win that opening round game. And sometimes I think momentum can be a real thing in the college football playoff. And, Carson Beck is a guy who has been here before. It's not like I am a huge believer in Carson Beck, but, this is Julian Saint's first playoff game. This is not Carson Beck's first playoff game. So I don't know. I'm with you. 9.5 is scary. I keep reminding myself that this Ohio State team was just a buzzsaw in the playoff last year. I mean, it was blowout after blowout after separation against Texas. Like, they covered all 4 of those games, 2 of them being touchdown favorites or more. Obviously, they won the national championship. But, part of me wonders, I think we said this maybe going into the Michigan game, or maybe it was even the Indiana game, which ultimately proved wrong. Part of me wonders if we aren't just looking at the obvious here, and that this Ohio State team is historically special. I mean, they've covered 8 of 10? Like, they got bit by Indiana, who's the number 1 team.
Right, but some of those, I kind of throw out, like, if they were laying 30-something against Purdue, like, I don't care if they covered or not, right? Like, even if they covered, it's like, great. Even if they didn't cover, I wouldn't hold it against them. I think it's more about, like, the quality of competition. And they showed up in a couple big games, like going to Washington and taking care of business, even though there was, like, a fluke, late hit call, whatever. Who cares? They showed up. With last year, I think they unlocked their offense and they came in sort of the underdog in a way off the Michigan loss. I think like Georgia's kind of that team this year where I'm more sort of, I just wonder if it's a different mindset. You're playing as the defending champ. You have the bullseye on your back. I'm not saying they snuck up on anyone because they're such a brand, but I don't know if we can draw the same parallels this year as we saw last year, just because last year they were almost unleashing some fury and what happened against Michigan and not going to the conference title game. I think it's just a much different path here. I think they're playing, I don't know, not to lose kind of thing. That's how they sort of felt when I was watching the Big Ten title game.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair scout from you. I do. And I don't know what to do with that Indiana result. To be a blip on the radar. The more we talk through this, it's probably a stay away from me at this number. I think if it was 7.5, I would play it for Ohio State. At 9.5 or 10.5, it's a stay away. And we'll reevaluate depending on what Ohio State does in this game. Let's move to the second game on the playoff sheet here. We've got Indiana and Alabama in the Rose Bowl. This should be an amazing game. Some weather concerns in the Rose Bowl, as crazy as that sounds, but it's the Hoosiers by 7.5. What do you see?
So this is tricky. At first glance, how do you not just grab the points? especially because Alabama, contrary to what we last saw against OU, they typically start really strong. Like Alabama's a great first quarter team. And not that Indiana isn't, but this is a team that I don't know is going to be digging itself from a hole. The problem is they don't blow out teams, but they shorten the game. I think Zignetti's an awesome coach. I think IU is the worthy number one team in the country. I think they're the worthy favorite here. I'm not laying 7. I don't care what the measurables say and things like that. Now Alabama's defense isn't that great. I think Mateer was shaky and he showed that. He threw a horrible pick six. Um, I just don't think Mendoza's that great. I think Zignetti is back-to-back coach of the year. I just don't think Mendoza should have won the Heisman. I don't think he was that great in the biggest games they had this year. Threw a pick six against Oregon, albeit at Autzen Stadium, and he played okay. And other than that, he was shaky against Ohio State. Like the kicker missed a field goal, right? He had the drive against Penn State, made some big throws, but you could argue if he played better, the 2-touchdown favorite would not have needed that drive. Iowa was a shaky performance, all things considered. So I don't care how he looked against Indiana State or Purdue or some of these other teams. All I care about is the quality competition. Those are 4 games, and he was fine. He just was never the most outstanding player in football. And frankly, it's been a kiss of death in a lot of postseason situations with the CFP. So you almost don't want to be the Heisman winner in these games. But he's obviously got a great head on his shoulder. He should be fine. If IU covers, I wouldn't be shocked. But if I'm going to pick 'em league or something like that, I have to take the 7 points here because I do think Bama can hang around, and I think Indiana's really good. I think their defense is really good too. So the total might feel a little too high as well.
I totally agree with your scout of the spread in this game. I'm going to be all over Alabama plus a touchdown here. And I do have a lot of respect for Kurt Cignetti in Indiana. I think Mendoza's been good enough, obviously, to win all of these games. I don't necessarily do think this is a really favorable number for an Alabama program that emotionally, should have gotten the monkey off their back last week a little bit. You're not worried about Kalen DeBoer abandoning this job anymore the way you were a week ago. Their response to falling behind to Oklahoma early and just being lights out after that game or after that start to that game was really, really impressive. It's one of the more impressive things I think we've seen a team do in the playoff era,
Yeah.
the 12-team playoff era at least. We know they have dudes. They've still got 5-star recruits all over. Indiana team has really impressively played to their ceiling in a way I think even Alabama has not. But I'm glad you called out a couple fortunate results. If Ohio State converts a 4th down conversion and makes a field goal. And this number's not at 7. It's not even close to 7 if, Ohio State doesn't trip over themselves a little bit. So I'm all over the dog here. I'll be wildly impressed if Indiana covers this full number. I would have made this closer to Indiana minus a field goal, to be honest. And I think it's probably my favorite play of the college football playoff. One more game on the list, and it is the Oregon Ducks taking on Texas Tech in the Orange Bowl. Dan Lanning's side favored by 2 here. Our total is at 52. When we did our pre-college football playoff episode, I gave out Oregon as one of my plays from a futures perspective, and this is obviously the pivotal game to make that bet worthwhile. Seeing them a slight favorite feels right to me. I think it's appropriately priced, but as someone who is holding that Oregon futures ticket right now, got to be honest, I'm shaking a little bit. I'm a little nervous, Doug. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, did the I don't know point spread cover collapse influence you at all, Greg? Just the way that JMU was able to score against the Oregon starters on defense, and sort of obviously that was a giant backdoor cover. But does that factor in? Is that in the back of your mind? Is there some recency bias there, in that's sparking your concern?
I think a little bit so. And I think even looking back further, the last 3-4 weeks, I think they've been vulnerable to decent offenses, right? It gave up 27 to USC. Even in that rainy game, I thought Iowa moved the ball pretty well against them. So, I think this is a team, they're perfectly comfortable winning games in the 30s. And that might be how they approach this game. The question for me, just Texas Tech's defense arguably the best defense in the sport this year. They got dudes all over on that side of the field. And, in the transfer portal era, I think we're seeing it with basketball too. Competent programs with competent funding and that just go about the portal the right way can very quickly build a national title caliber team. And I'm wondering if that's what Texas Tech is, at least on the defensive side of the field. I know they're going to score on Oregon. My question is, does Oregon score with them?
I think so. I like the over here. I think we've seen matchups like this where you get a little worried that the defensive front and Tech's defensive front's excellent. But I just think speed kind of offsets all that. And yes, the Ducks are going to have to matriculate up the field probably more than they're used to because the Red Raiders pass rush and everything. But I just think Oregon's going to get their points. The only times they haven't was in horrible weather, right? At home against Wisconsin, at Iowa in the game you mentioned. Yeah, those games got to be a slogfest, but they were back to kind of scoring like the USC game. And not that the Trojans defense belongs in any sort of convo with Tech's defense here, and I think the Red Raiders offense is a little underrated. And frankly, the way JMU was able to move the ball, I think kind of opened some eyes, at least in my eyes, that Texas Tech's going to be able to score here. And one thing that stood out to me is you don't really hear coaches say this a lot, but Sataki and another coach, I'm trying to remember, was kind of offered up the fact that they thought Texas Tech was the best team in the country. Now, I understand why Sataki would say that, having, them being the only two losses they had that year and just got drilled in the Big 12 title game. But usually you hear coaches say very complimentary things, but never go as far as saying that's the best team in the country. So guys who know ball, so to speak, and who face teams offered that up. Now, not that they have faced these other Big Ten and SEC teams during the regular season to compare it against, but I think Tech passes the smell test. There's going to be a lot of recreational bettors who are going to be betting Oregon because they just don't know enough about Texas Tech. I think it's going to be a great game. I wouldn't be shocked if Tech wins. I don't know, comfortably by 10, maybe, I guess. Either side wins by 10, right? So I like the over here. I think it's going to be an awesome game.
Yeah, I think I lean with the over as well, and I'll add a little contextual info here on why I think that's a good play. But I'm invested enough with my Oregon future that I don't want any more of the Ducks individually in this game. To me, that's the way to bet Ducks money line, is that I already hold the futures ticket anticipating that they win this game. I do want to point out, in the last 2 seasons, what has Dan Lanning's group done in big games? I know there's been a lot of debate of him when he gets to the playoff and when is it going to be his time. Just going to count a couple even regular season games along in this mix, starting with last year. Pretty much every big game Oregon plays goes over. Starting with the beginning of the season when Boise State was a big non-conference game, it went over at 61.5. The rivalry game against Oregon State, over 49 last year. Games against Ohio State and Michigan in the regular season, both big brand teams, both over the number. And then both games in the playoff, over 51 against Penn State. There were 82 points scored in that game. And then over 55.5 against Ohio State. There were 62 points scored in that game. This year, that trend has continued. I mean, it's not like Oregon has had a gauntlet schedule by any means, but you look at some of their big games. That Penn State game was before anyone knew Penn State was a bad team. That went over. I think the
very
rivalry
fluky,
game
but yeah.
It was very fluky, but it got there. And then USC was a points fest, 42-27, went over. So I don't know. It feels like just Oregon, like I said, they kind of approach these big games of like, well, we'll outscore you. We'll get to the 30s and we're fine with that. Do I think that's a great formula to win a national championship? No, but I do think it's a great formula to cash an over ticket. And at 52, it's probably as low as you're going to get an Oregon over ticket in the playoffs this year. So there we have it. All right. There is our full postseason preview for the rest of the Big Ten Conference's games. Reminder, next week we are planning on coming back to the show with multiple episodes a week. We'll have college basketball picks for you and continue to cover each of the Big Ten teams that progress in the college football playoff. For now, Doug, let's wrap. Is your best bet for this week?
So really torn on a few of these games because I have solid like leans in a lot of them. But I'm going to go with Alabama plus the full 7. I think there's some 7.5 at Bet Rivers, went back and forth. I think you can pick off 7.5 at Bet Rivers. I think it's just too hard to turn down that many points. I don't love Bama. I don't think they're going to win it all either. We certainly saw them get manhandled in the SEC title game, but I think they're going to be up to the task. It just feels like too many points. Although I've loved betting on the Hoosiers all year, and Zignetti's a monster. But I think this is too high of a price.
Bama plus 7's my favorite against the spread play. I'll take the over in Oregon, Texas Tech, just to balance this out and give some variation. But those are definitely my two strongest plays of the next round of the college football playoff. Reminder, this show is part of College Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Sports Network. You can also get Sports Better's Paradise with Jimmy Ott every single week. We'll be back to 2 episodes a week starting next week. For now, thank you, Doug. Thank you to our full team behind the scenes for all of the insights on this program. Enjoy the rest of the college football games on the Big Ten slate this week, and we'll see you again next week.